Hello and welcome to the Kryptonaut Podcast. I'm Mark Storrs, and with me as always is
Chaos
and
Rob Morphy.
I was trying to do it like a game show host, and every time I think I can do it, I can't.
I did not discern that, honestly. I just thought you were just delivering it the way you always do. It's interesting that you were putting a whole character behind it. Want to try it again? Just let's hear it. Let's hear it one more time.
I don't think I actually put the character. I think in my mind I was like, "Hello, welcome to the Kryptonaut Podcast. I'm Mark Storrs. With me as always is."
Now, see, that would have driven the point home.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and I just,
that was
know, I think maybe it's more of like it's like an attempt at failure, but I didn't even attempt the failure.
Wait,
I just made the failure.
An attempt at failure, which in and of itself is a great concept, but you didn't even attempt it. You made it.
Yeah,
that's so goddamn existential. That should be like a Buddhist koan. Except it's fucking completely depressing and self-defeating.
Well, I mean, we are the masters of our own reality. So there you go. I just mastered my own reality. I was not a game show host. Now I am a game show host. And welcome to the Kryptonaut Podcast. So there it is. You like that?
You know what? This quarantine has to end soon.
What is happening,
buddy?
I thought that I was drinking less, and then it turns out I'm not. So, I don't know what to do. You
intentionally failed at drinking less. It's standard ops.
I thought I was doing all right, and then I went to go return a bunch of cans, and I had like 12 bags of cans, and the redemption place was closed because of COVID, and I'm like, fuck, what am I supposed to do with these? And I was like, I'm just going to donate them. So hopefully, my drinking issue has gone to help the local Boy Scout troop. Actually, I think it was the Girl Scouts.
Better yet.
Yeah, hopefully it helps them with their, whatever Girl Scouts do, whatever they're up to. Hopefully it's cool and they're doing shit. So
here.
Speaking of donations, we made our first donation to our local Meals on Wheels charity here in Cuyahoga County due to our fundraising over at hellerspace.com with our 2 t-shirts that we got. So thank you all so very much.
Yes. You guys rule the pit. You've helped a lot of people. Thank you.
It was pretty dope. And in typical Kryptonaut podcast fashion, of course, there was like a bumbling mess of getting the donation to the proper person. So,
like a reverse heist or what?
Actually, yes. It was kind of like a reverse heist where the donation was dropped off and then it was lost. But it made its way. Listen, it made its way there. Yeah, it eventually made its way there. There's just there's a lot of confusion. Things happen. I get it, whatever. But for a good quick second there, I'm like, man, we got robbed. What do we do? But thankfully we did not. The money found its way there, and we are very thank you all to everyone that donated to that. It's so awesome that we can give that a decent chunk of money over there to the Meals on Wheels folks. That is super cool. So thank you all. Patreon. Let's not forget Patreon. Patreon.com/Kryptonaut Podcast. $1 is a shout out. $5 is a shout out and some bonus audio. So thank you to everyone that supports us. We appreciate it. We have some shout outs to do. We went over these ahead of time. I'm definitely going to fuck them up. So let's get started with Matt Hughes.
Matthew, thank you.
Next, we have Under the Influence.
Oh, my God.
One word.
I feel like that was my early 90s MC name, but well played. Thank you.
Totally. Alex Hex. That's fucking dope.
Yeah. Hanging out with Constantine, doing nefarious shit.
Next, we have Sebastian Barnes.
Very regal. Thank you, Sebastian.
And I believe ending it out, let me just count where I am right here. Ending it off here, we have Jeremiah Cook. Thank you so much, Jeremiah.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Let's continue with Carlos Godoy. Thank you, Mr. Godoy.
Thank you.
Heather Robbins.
Nice.
Isaro Medina Jr.
Sweet.
Well played, sir. Void or possibly Void. I think I'm going to go with Void. Void.
Yeah, Void.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's Void. I know.
I'm just being a dick. I know. I'm just messing around.
God damn. Okay.
See, Void, you got a quadruple shout out without even needing it.
From
Rob's fuck up.
From Rob's dad joke. Congratulations.
Brian Ham. Mr. Ham.
Thank you very much, Brian. All right. I believe I'm continuing along here with Brett Manning from BrettIsAGirl.com.
Yeah.
Brett, what up?
Artist extraordinaire. Thank you, Brett.
Yeah, BrettIsAGirl.com. Check that out. Justin Guideson, I believe that is right. If not, let me know. Joyce Gaucher. Oh, shit. Our very own meme queen, Joyce. What is up? Thank
you so much.
That is so dope. Anthony Johansson. And I'll be ending it off with Michael James.
Mr. James. Thank you. And I will continue with Carlos, Jesus Christ. Carlos Moran. I know. Sometimes I just can't say things.
You may or may not have a car. I don't know.
Thank you, Mr. Carlos Moran.
Oh, Jesus Christ. All right. Tess or Tez, T-E-S, thank you very much. If you want another shout out, just say I fucked it up and we'll do it.
It's Tess. It's Tess.
It's one S. Two S's is Tess. This could be Tess.
Okay. Okay.
Could be. Hey, are you really flabbergasted we're not even through Patreon yet?
Yeah.
You guys realize all the editing is going to be here. Like the most editing I ever do is when we do this.
Seriously. So Robert, who do you have next?
Josh Trapito, Brett Rapp. Thank you, Brett and Josh. Jackson Kim, Con Akyol, and this is an official correction, Rick, not Rich, Belcher. Rick Belcher. Thank you.
Yeah. One of us said Rich Belcher. It could have been me. I don't know. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
So, but yes, Rick, there's your correction. Thank you so very much. All right, cool. So there's Patreons. Thank y'all so very much. We appreciate the support over there. Patreon.com/Kryptonaut Podcast. This week we are talking about the Ariel school incident. Mm-hmm. We've been hinting at this before. So yeah, let's get into it. Let's get started. We're going to begin here with, in the 1990s, a school nestled in the rural region of Zimbabwe became host to one of the craziest close encounters on the books when nearly 100 students claimed to have had a frightening prophetic run-in with a flying saucer and its unearthly occupants, generating what has become Africa's most infamous extraterrestrial encounter and inarguably one of the most mind-boggling mass alien sightings in history. The Ariel school incident.
Good stuff. All right, let's just begin, as we usually do, painting a picture. Located approximately 20 miles southeast of Zimbabwe's bustling capital city of Harare is the rustic yet wealthy farming community of Rua. In recent years, the population of this once tiny region has grown exponentially, with citizens looking for a reprieve from the urban rat race. But just a quarter of a century ago, the area was still an isolated and in many ways idyllic multicultural community. In 1991, just years before revolutionary icon come authoritarian strongman Robert Mugabe would inaugurate the terrible purges which stripped property from any Zimbabwean of non-African ancestry, the very expensive and private Ariel school was established by wealthy regional farmers to cater to what was then their children, a mixed population of indigenous African, Asian, and European students. It would be in an overgrown stretch of brush behind the Ariel School's dusty playground, where on September 16th, 1994, one of the most notable, presumably extraterrestrial encounters on record would take place, an incident that would come to be known as Africa's Roswell, which I think is, needless to say, one of the most fucking overused cliches in ufology. Everything is somewhere's fucking Roswell. Just like every lake monster is somewhere else's Nessie. It would be like going to fucking, Tijuana and having Santo introduced as Mexico's Hulk Hogan. At a certain point, you just got to fucking stop creating an analogy, and I think the Roswell is one of them.
Yeah, man, everything is its own thing, dude. Like, be yourself.
Be yourself.
Be your own thing.
But the series of events that would lead to the bedlam known as the Ariel School incident would begin 2 days earlier on the evening of Wednesday, September 14th, when thousands of observers from Botswana, Zambia, and Zimbabwe spied an array of odd rocket-shaped objects that spewed quote-unquote orange streamers and cascades of sparks in their wakes as they soared over the skies of southern Africa. Others, such as teacher Vivian Pascoe, described an enormous golden zeppelin that floated over her Bulawayo, Zimbabwe cottage at 8:54 p.m. trailed by, and I quote, myriads of tiny lights like satellites which sparkled at intervals of red, green, blue, and yellow mixtures.
It's like Close Encounter shit.
It is, definitely.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Just colors ahoy.
Yeah. Sparkles,
Totally.
colors, orange trails. Someone's dosed, clearly.
In a blimp, Rob. A blimp.
And a fucking blimp. I know. I cringed, but you got to report what's there. So,
and
enjoy.
let's not forget the mention of satellites, and we all know who sings the song "Satellites," don't we?
Yeah,
Christ.
we sure do.
Do you know who sings that song, Robert?
It's escaping me now, and hopefully
Christopher,
forever.
can you please
evermore.
tell us who sings "Satellites"?
I'm not bringing it up.
Did
Do
he
they ever
cover
do Slayer covers?
No,
Mark?
no, and I don't think he ever covered Generator, at least not yet. But I did recently see that he did do a live stream, so that's for all you DMB guys out there. So yeah, there it
Good
is.
Lord in heaven.
All right, continue with your Zeppelins, Robert.
Some bystanders, not standards.
You have no bystanders.
Jesus Christ. Some bystanders believed that they were witnessing an airplane crashing before the silent and mysterious missiles abruptly changed trajectory, revealing rows of multicolored lights and tail plumes filled with astonishing hues. Samantha Peck, another eyewitness also hailing from Bulawayo, described what she saw. This thing, whatever it was beautiful. It had a circular-shaped bright light as the leader, and behind it were trails of lights in beautiful colors, green, orange, and yellow. It moved slowly and looked as if it was just above the house. The amazing thing is that it moved absolutely silently. So there's a lot of crazy, spectacular light shows happening here.
Yeah.
Cool.
While some saw the slow-moving objects, others swore they could feel the air vibrate as the UFOs scorched past at seemingly impossible speeds. At 9:04 p.m., many reported a tremendous sonic boom that shook walls and rattled windows in multiple regions, and that's across all three countries. Scholars and skeptics chalked the furor up to a meteor shower, which was indeed occurring at the time, but hundreds of panicked citizens phoned into their local police and TV stations that evening, claiming that among the throngs of shooting stars were an array of vividly illumined, highly technological, and apparently intelligently controlled vehicles, some of which measured as being approximately 1/5 the diameter of, and this is for you, Mark, the alleged moon.
Yeah, that's
I'm
right.
not
There you go.
sure how they
About
can
the moon?
measure that. But
Yeah, no, that's complete. That's, I was thinking that. And, my first thought was like, man, 5 of these and it would block the moon. And I'm like, yeah, but if it's like 27 feet above your house, it's not that big. If
exactly.
it's, 1,000 feet, it's a little, bigger. If it's right next to the moon, it's fucking ginormous. That
big,
is so not measurable. But it was mentioned, so I mentioned it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the alleged moon. There it is.
You're welcome.
Thank
These
you, I
and
appreciate
numerous
that.
other sightings were recorded by renowned Zimbabwean ufologist Cynthia Hind, who was, at the time, serving as MUFON's African coordinator. Hind published these odd observations, resulting in what was considered to be Southern Africa's first official mass UFO sighting in her magazine, UFO Afra News, which endeavored to cover all of the airborne anomalies seen over her home continent. Good news for UFO researchers, a lot of these are on the Internet Archive. And so I was able to dig up the relevant ones, and I'm sure it's going to be a mother lode for a lot of people studying one of the harder to study regions regarding aliens and ufology, which is Africa, because it's riddled with cryptids and other things, but it's definitely much harder, at least in the Western world, to find UFO literature centered around that region. So
Nice.
one to grow on. But as alarming as this concentration of sightings surely was, they were destined to be just the tip of a much more disturbing ufological iceberg. The following morning, on Thursday, September 15th, an unnamed mother was driving her son near the Ariel school when they both noticed a glossy, cigarette-shaped object flying above them. This cylindrical conundrum was also seen by 3 Ariel school pupils, but their sighting was so brief that it caused almost no stir in the student body. The following day, on Friday, September 16th, a woman identified only as Mrs. Stevens, who lived on a farm not far from Ariel School, claimed that when she got up to go to the bathroom in the wee hours, she noticed an eerie reddish glow coming through her window. When she looked outside, the startled housewife saw a massive orange ball hovering directly over her henhouse. That's just something you don't need in the morning.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's grief. Mrs. Stevens had never seen anything like it, and she rushed to get her husband, but by the time they got back to the window, the object had, much to her chagrin, vanished. Nevertheless, strange as these multiple sightings surely were, they would pale before the event that would transpire just hours later at the nearby private school. The morning of Friday, September 16th, began just like any other at the Ariel School, with classes followed by a mid-morning break for students. At 10:15 a.m., the entire student body was allowed outside to eat lunch and spend some free time playing and socializing in the sprawling expanse behind the institute. Although they were free to mingle as they pleased, the younger students, grades 1st through 4th, tended to congregate on the far side of the yard where the swing slides and jungle gyms had been erected, and adult supervision was never far away. The older students, grades 5th through 7th, spent most of their break hanging out in an area known as the Logs, which was a grouping of eucalyptus tree stumps that served as a crude barrier separating the dusty schoolyard from a dense patch of tall grass, scrub brush, and gum trees, which were known to conceal venomous snakes, spiders, and scorpions, as well as the occasional jackal. Oh. You know, fucking Africa, the Disneyland of horrible ways to die.
Dude, it's kind of like the best children's playground ever, though.
Oh yeah, you got to be aware, be very aware,
dude. It sounds only slightly less dangerous than St. Mary's Playground.
Yeah, the one that we grew up on. Yeah,
no, we all got tetanus and or mile-long splinters that threatened to fucking gouge out our aortas every fucking time we even looked at that place.
Yeah, but it made us stronger, and I think much like this schoolyard right here produces some fucking hard-ass kids.
Oh, if you're
out there fucking around, yeah, exactly. It's like Darwinism on the fucking playground. Like you're gonna make it or you're not. Get with it.
Be careful, don't cross the logs. That's why they always say that. Common phrase.
Maybe I shouldn't run a playground. It's not in my future.
Logs. The fucking logs.
Awesome. All right, cool. So fucking good job, kids, on surviving, hopefully. And if not, I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna give a little spoiler here. No deaths. I mean, maybe eventually.
That's good.
But on this day in 1994,
all right, good.
Everyone lives.
See positivity.
Not always happily, but they live.
All right, good.
Although spending time on the concourse was a daily ritual, this Friday's recess would be unique for 2 reasons. The first being that, due to the fact that teachers and administrators would all be attending a mandatory staff meeting, there would be no adult supervision in the yard. That is fucking no. Not some, not limited. Zip.
Okay.
The second being that the 7th graders were inside taking a test, allowing the younger kids to spread their wings without incurring the endless harassment, debasement, and sarcasm of bullying preteens on this particularly scorching 91-degree Fahrenheit day.
All right. No kids to be dicks to you. There you go.
7th graders are dicks. They might be, like next to Nazis and a handful of others, the biggest douchebags on earth.
Dude, we all suffered at the hands of 7th graders when we were 6th graders and 5th graders. It happens, man, Much like my stance on guns, sometimes you gotta stand your ground, man. You gotta pop someone in the fucking mouth.
And if you happen to go to private parochial school, as Chris and I did, you also got to endure them in 3rd and 4th and below.
Oh, bummer.
Because it was a big old clumping.
Once. Yeah, all right, well.
But let's get back on point. One of the children enjoying her newfound status as one of the big kids on the playground was 11-year-old sixth grader Salma Siddick. Salma was near the eucalyptus stumps with her friend Emma C. when she noticed that the power lines running above the uncultivated wild scrub beyond the log barrier abruptly emitted an abnormally loud electric buzz.
Ooh, transformer blowing up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This was followed by an eerie sound that one of Salma's frightened classmates said sounded like someone playing the flute.
Was it Jethro Tull?
Of Zamfir.
What? Nah, dude, was it Jethro Tull?
Yeah. What's more terrifying? Yeah, I think
that's
Jethro
what I
Tull.
thought of first.
Yeah, because the electric flute is always going to be eerier.
The electric flute? Is that what he plays? An electric flute?
You know, I'm no expert. I really don't know.
I don't know things.
That he had a song. What was the song? Like Iron Lung or something? Aqua Lung?
Yes.
His tribute to polio? Fucking Iron Lung?
Yeah, Iron Lung. That's it.
Clearly, I'm an expert on music in general and Jethro Tull in particular. I just remember listening to his shit back in the day, more like enduring it, which would be appropriate, and it always sounded like it was synthesized and moved up. I don't know if it was. I don't know how flutes work.
Moved up?
What did you listen to?
Like a Moog synthesizer. I don't know. I listened to crazy shit.
It's not Jethro Tull.
When I was in 7th grade, I was exposed to some weird older dudes, and they liked their fucking Zeppelin and Tull.
Somebody lied to you about this was Tull. It wasn't Jethro Tull.
I'm the first to admit I know fuck all about Mr. Tull and his body of work.
Well, Jethro Tull.
Maybe there's an electric flute. Maybe there isn't.
I believe it's Ian Anderson.
No, there is a such thing, I think, as an electric flute. Okay. But I don't know if that's... I don't think that's what he did. I don't think that's what it was.
Our listeners will definitely tell us if there's such thing as an electric flute.
There is. But
okay, well, you know.
He might have been playing a normal flute and then somehow modified it in post. We'll just all agree that it's an eerie sound when it's coming above a playground.
I just think it was mic'd, really.
I think that he just was playing a flute into a microphone. All right, we got to stop because I'm going to go off on a giant Jethro Tull tangent in a second. So I'm just going to start talking about it.
I will defer to Chris's knowledge of fucking the flautist.
All right,
flutist.
Listen,
how do you even say it?
A flautist.
I don't know anything
Jethro
about flutes.
Anything about flutes.
You're bound to know more than me, dude.
All right. Why?
There's another flute player. Listen, there's electricity happening. Jethro Tull shows up. What happens next?
Right. You're right. Stay on target.
Pan shows up. Jethro Tull shows up.
God damn it. It was then that the kids near the logs began seeing strange flashes of light in the skies above. A student chronicled as Barry D. testified that he had seen no less than 3 objects with flashing red lights flying overhead. The UFOs would vanish, then instantaneously reappear some distance away. This happened about 3 times, according to Barry D. By now, the hubbub surrounding these unique sights and sounds began attracting the attention of the older kids who gravitated toward the inhospitable patch of treacherous and uncultivated wild that lay behind the playground. It was then that these aerial apparitions collated into a single silvery trapezoidal object with red lights running along the base, which hovered above the power lines. The extraordinary craft was orbited by an array of red, purple, blue, and white spheres that rotated around the primary object in a counterclockwise motion. So we all see it. The trapezoid of silver.
Yeah.
The orbiting orbs.
It almost reminds me of like sacred geometry or something that's kind of like psychedelic. It's pretty neat.
It is. There is elements of the psychedelic, especially in the first mass UFO sighting, from 2 days before, as well as Chris mentioned earlier, Close Encounters of the fucking Third Kind, which this is one of the few that really, evokes in me the beautiful imagery that I think all of us were absolutely floored by back in the day.
Yeah,
totally.
The children marveled at the sight above them. Then, without warning, the multicolored spheres shot away one at a time as the craft slowly descended toward the brush, where it came to a halt, hovering approximately 3 feet off the ground. Selma Siddick described the ship as being, this is interesting, silver-esque in color, sort of disc-shaped, but it was a type of metal or fabrication that I had never seen before. Now you're wondering, how many fabrications has an 11-year-old girl seen?
Yeah.
Well, that will be established. And my dad is a steel fabricator, so I could say that's steel or that's aluminum or whatever, but I had never seen anything like that before. So I have no idea what it was. It was completely unusual, and I say silver-esque because it wasn't quite silver, but that was the closest thing I could link it to. So a young expert on metallurgy.
All right. Yeah, totally.
Ish.
You know?
Ish.
Yeah.
With the swarming mob of curious students growing thicker by the moment, this already strange scene took a turn toward the fantastic as a pair of quote-unquote porcelain-skinned, bulbous-headed, black-eyed beings who were just over 3 feet in height and were clad neck to foot in shiny, form-fitting ebony suits emerged from atop the floating vehicle.
Oh, we finally got some. We got some occupants. We got some pilots. We got some explorers. We got some fucking aliens.
The
nice
good stuff.
Little tiny guys looking like little, I don't know, S&M dudes or something with their fucking super tight suits.
With the little Cenobite suits.
Yeah, dude. I didn't think about that. They got fucking chatter over there. Fucking sweet.
And they're assless chaps, which I conveniently forgot to mention. And yes, Lisa,
kids there. Weird.
I know all chaps are assless. It's just the way we say it.
Yeah.
All right. One remained topside, running back and forth for no apparent reason.
He's the cool one.
He's the cool one.
That guy's cool.
It's like Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. He's just dancing.
Yeah, he's
the energy's there.
He's the boss tone, dude. He came to dance
skanker.
for. Yeah, he came to skank for Jethro Tull.
Skank for humanity, and of course Jethro Tull.
Nice.
While the others scurried to the ground, undulating through the tall, vermin-infested grass, utilizing weirdly fluid movements. Although the witnesses were unable to see the creature's feet, many had the impression that it was floating just above the ground, astride the craft. So you got running back and forth, fucking super skanker, and then you've got floaty interpretive dancer just doing the same thing on the ground, apparently.
Yeah, man, they're just fucking having a good time, dude. Fucking jamming out.
I'm not here to judge what these creatures want to do.
It's cool, whatever.
11-year-old Guy G, who had rushed to the far end of the playground to see what was going on, described the diminutive humanoids as being, quote, quite lightish in color, with round heads that tapered into narrow faces with enormous black eyes that began low on their cheeks and slanted upwards to sharp points.
So not necessarily like a classic gray, but in the realm, right?
Yeah,
it's kind of there.
Pretty close.
You know? We're getting it is
close.
really close.
Okay.
We'll finish up and then we'll break that down. Guy also indicated that their mouths were little more than slits and that their noses and ears were hardly discernible. The picture was made complete with his depiction of scrawny necks, frail torsos, and spindly arms and legs.
Oh, they just
While the above description seems to be on the mark for what has become a prototypical post-Betty and Barney Hill, or at least Whitley Strieber, portrayal of a gray extraterrestrial, there would be one significant variation. The long, jet black locks that cascaded from their bulb-like heads down to their shoulders, which incited one student, Daniel M., to decry, "That thing almost looked like a hippie."
Oh, man, you know what? It was Black Sabbath all along. That's who showed up.
Yeah, Alice Cooper
Black Sabbath.
was always the one destined to be at that show.
I don't know.
That's right. You have Rob has an artist rendition actually of these creatures, and they do look like, I believe it was the guys from Astonishing Legends, right? That said that they look like Alice Cooper. Yeah,
they said no. I think they said specifically. Well, not specifically. I'm going to mangle the quote a little bit, but as if Dr. Seuss had drawn Alice Cooper.
Oh, gotcha,
something to that effect, which is fucking infinitely more clever than anything I would have come up with, and fucking pretty spot on.
This still could be an emo core band.
Oh, definitely. 94?
Oh, no.
I mean...
an emo core band in 94.
A bunch of pale kids dressed in
emerging.
black with long, straight hair. Stop it.
Yeah, maybe
they would have been goth back
Come
then.
on now.
But still.
Sure.
I mean, all right. Could have been.
Was
some
there
weird
a hot topic? Was that store established pre or post 94? Does anyone know?
I'm pretty sure it was around in 94. Dude, this could have been some weird post-hardcore new wave Jethro Tull tribute band. All right, this is what it could have been.
It could have been AFI.
Oh, you're right. It could have been AFI with what was it? Fucking Davey Havoc? Was that the fucking dude's name?
It could have been Davey.
It could have been fucking. Oh my god! All right, it was solved. It was AFI. They showed up to play a show.
Yeah. Tiffany played Malls. Fucking AFI played fucking the dangerous scrub behind Zimbabwean schools. It just makes sense.
Before we continue with the story, on a real quick side note, I will not talk about this very long. Check out the Sons of Sam. It's an AFI side project that Davey Havoc did that was really cool. It was like his Sam Hain Misfits inspired project that I think was infinitely better than
that would be
they
interesting.
Were doing. Yeah, I think Glenn Danzig actually, I believe, sings on one song. So check that out. So anyway, AFI and Davey Havoc aside, for all you punk rock kids out there, Robert, please continue.
Emma C., who was with Salma when the incident began, claimed that she had been both exhilarated and alarmed by the black-eyed beings, telling investigators, "My heart kind of went faster, then slower, then faster, then slower. It was excitement, then scary." Guy G agreed with his classmates' assessment of the situation, stating, "I was excited at first, but then I saw one of the smaller boys crying, and when I asked him why, he said he was afraid. Then I also became afraid."
Welcome to panic attacks.
Yeah,
kids.
Welcome to childhood. Welcome to being a social animal. But let's break it down a little here. This fear, at least I think, stemmed in part from the fact that the children of the Rua region had, by and large, never encountered any Western ufological lore. That having been said, they were all too familiar with the legends of evil goblin-like entities known as Tokoloshi, who were notorious for their penchant for devouring human flesh, in particular that of misbehaving children. Or so their psychologically abusive parents would tell them. So,
Oh, I forgot about the fucking Tokoloshi. That's a throwback for us. Holy shit.
No, definitely. I mean, we have been fascinated and reporting on Zimbabwean goblin/Tokoloshi attacks in like a previous podcast and incarnations of our social life for a long time. We are going to be doing, in fact, I've been assembling it during the plague here, an epic Zimbabwean goblin story. But a lot of the kids that were there weren't thinking in terms of Spielberg or Western notions, scary and lighthearted, of aliens. They were thinking of flesh-eating goblins. So
weird.
It definitely spread the fear pretty quickly. It was then that the humanoids suddenly seemed to become aware of the youthful eyes that were watching their every move. The two beings stopped and stared at the children as an eerie wind suddenly kicked up, blowing from the direction of the hovering ship directly toward the wrapped kids. And that's when things started to get weird. Weirder. They got weirder. It was already weird.
All right.
Two young students, Lisa and Emily T., inexplicably began skipping next to the logs when one of the beings floated to within a few feet and began imitating their movements, albeit without making contact with the ground.
Oh, boy.
Lisa later confirmed, "I felt scared because I never saw a person like that before." Dead up, Lisa. That's legit.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Nailed it.
Fair enough.
Also, why are you skipping in the middle of a fucking alien encounter? And why is it imitating you? But whatever. Another entity, some say a third, while others insist there were only two, began to approach another group of youngsters who described the being as rushing toward them, then vanishing at the last second, only to repeat the action over and over again, as if it were stuck inside a real-life video game glitch.
Oh, interesting.
That's just ick. That's ick.
That's the worst thing so far.
So far, by far.
Yeah, it's kind of fucked up.
Because then it makes you question one of two things. Either this thing is stuck in a fucking terrible loop and it can't break free, or we are, and simulation theory is absolutely real, and this thing is showing how easily it can break down and your life is a fucking sim lie.
Yeah, that's
or some other fucking potentially awful scenario that I can't even think of right now.
Yeah, hence the alleged moon robber. Thank you.
Making the situation even more surreal was the fact that, according to Salma, the beings employed stiff and jerky movements as though they were statues that had recently and alarmingly come to life. And that's all you need. Statues come into life. Even the impression of it in the mind of a kid is enough to fucking be like, oh, I threw up in my mouth. Gross. It was then that, according to scores of distraught students, the unnerving ebony-eyed aliens endeavored to establish a telepathic link in order to communicate with their indigenous hosts. But unlike the sickly sweet scenarios conjured up by Spielbergian scribes depicting humans who find solace in the sagacious yet benign aura of these oft-adorable otherworldly beings, the kids of Ariel School who gazed into the abysmal depths of their glistening ink-black eyes came into contact with malignant monstrosities whose dire warnings inspired abject horror.
You got to pick your audience, man. You don't want to be exposing kids to this shit. It's too much. You got to go to the local council. You can't be like, when there's a bunch of kids, let's fucking freak them out with the truth. Guess what, kids? 2020, fucking COVID. Good fucking luck. Like, Jesus Christ. All right, well,
yeah, no, for these kids, it's a nightmare scenario, and for the local bureaucracy, it's AFI wanted to have an environmental, little protest out there just to help the kids learn about the world.
They had all their eyeliner. Everything was cool. They were screaming.
One was excited and then scared, and then excited and then scared. So it's not like they're all like. I mean, they're all just like, oh, what the fuck's going on? Otherwise, they wouldn't be skipping around in a vat of vipers and fucking scorpions and AFI. So what the fuck?
And Jethro Tull, and I still say Black Sabbath is there.
And Black Sabbath and Pan and
Ronnie James Dio Sabbath? Or it's long black hair.
Tough one. Yeah, but Tony Iommi. Iommi has long hair.
Yeah, no dearth of long black hair and Sabbath. Fine.
Lots of it.
All right. So what I think they're saying is that once these things made eye contact, multiply, it seems like, not just with one or two, but with like a large group of these students, that's when things started getting darker. So the kids that were excited, then, scared, that might have gotten true, but I think things got heavier at that moment.
The truth, man, the truth.
Okay.
These messages, these telepathic messages, came in the form of apocalyptic images of environmental destruction and mass carnage, which left the children horrified and overwhelmed, resulting in, for some, years of terrifying nightmares and a fear that they would be stolen at some point in the future. Selma would describe their eyes as being very big and very dark and very, very captivating. Nothing like I had ever seen before and incredibly magnetic. I almost felt like it took effort for me to break that gaze. Just months after the shocking incident, in November of 2004, the Ariel School campus was visited by Pulitzer Prize-winning author and the head of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, Dr. John E. Mack, and his associate, Dominique Kalimanopoulos. I think I got that right. Who, before his untimely death on September 27th, 2004, at the fucking hands of a drunk driver, was courageous enough to break the academic taboo on seriously researching the phenomenon of alien abductions. So probably most of our listeners are really familiar with John Mack. Even though he's been gone now 16 years, give or take, he really was one of the first very serious, he was the head of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. And even though his peers tried to blacklist him to a degree, he wasn't like a full-on ridiculous believer. He just felt like there was some merit to what was going on and decided, unlike his, less bold peers, to actually look into it. So he's really a hero in the world of ufology as far as I'm concerned.
Totally.
Mack, whose clinical expertise in child and adolescent psychology helped him to win over the trust of the still traumatized students, spent 2 days interviewing 12 of the young eyewitnesses. their parents, and staff in an effort to get a clearer picture of what had transpired. One girl, no doubt mortified by the ridicule her tale might inspire, insisted, "I swear by every hair on my head that I am telling the truth." In a typical exchange, Mac asked one of the skipping girls, Lisa, how the beings communicated to her. She explained that she wasn't sure how the creatures had put the terrible images into her mind, but she believed it had something to do with their eyes. When asked what it was that she saw, Lisa replied, "Maybe they were telling us the world was going to end. Maybe because we don't look after the planet and the air properly. I just felt horrible inside. I thought maybe the world was going to end. All of the trees would just go down and there would be no air and people would be dying." That's fucking heavy.
All right.
10-year-old Isabel said, "He was just staring. He was scary. We were trying not to look at him because he was scary. My eyes and feelings went with him." That... I know it's weird, but, you know, a 10-year-old child is going to have a weird way of describing something that profound.
Yeah.
Eyes and feelings.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Going away with them. Yeah. Wow.
A young, unnamed girl with strawberry blonde hair tied behind her in a bright pink bow and matching headband looked pensively around as she was interviewed by Mac on video. Seemingly too afraid to utter what she was thinking, she finally piped up in a soft, scared voice saying, "They were just staring at me. It was scary. Their eyes looked evil. It looked evil because it was just staring at me as if it wanted to come and take us." When John Mack asked her what effect the creature's disturbing telepathic warning had on her, she replied matter-of-factly that the only thing she could think to do was simply weep and sprint away from its hideous gaze.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
Jesus.
it's heavy.
Okay.
Following this panic-inducing psychological bombardment, the UFOnauts and the contraption they had come down in both, according to most eyewitnesses, disappeared, leaving nothing behind but the trembling shrubbery and the lingering mental trauma. The terrified kids rushed back into the school to alert the teachers as to what they had endured. The instructors would later confirm that the first thing they noticed was an audible escalation in the excitement levels they heard from the playground. This was followed by a startling rush of screams, which sent them scurrying into the hallways to find out what was going on. The first adult that the kids came into contact with was a volunteer, physiotherapist and mother, Alison Kirkman, who worked at the tuck shop where the kids would purchase their lunches. Tuck shop is just like a snack shop. This school was small, obviously only like 200 students. They didn't have a cafeteria, so you brought your money in and you could either buy fruit or it was the 90s, so you could get fucking whatever you wanted pretty much. And then the bigger kids would go buy the logs to eat while the younger kids would just frolic on the playground. But anyway,
nice, man.
The one adult that had a partial access to the outdoors was Alison Kirkman, but she was not facing where, you know, the whole event had taken place. So Kirkman's daughter, Fifi, age 10, was among the students who ran in to tell her to come out and see the little man. But she was convinced that she was being pranked and refused to leave her post for fear that the kids might have used the moment to either steal sweets, cash, or both. I know, paranoid much?
Nice.
Yeah, really. Jesus.
This decision not to leave her post would be one that she almost certainly regretted forever after. And she should fucking have a little faith. I mean, you don't have to like go way far. Bring the cash box with you. Come on, Kirkman. The staff was now confronted with dozens of frenzied students. Some were babbling enthusiastically and others were sobbing inconsolably. Upon hearing what had happened, the skeptical, though sage, Ariel School headmaster Colin Mackey quickly separated about 60 of the older eyewitnesses and had them draw and write down exactly what they had seen. This apparently arbitrary selection resulted in years of erroneous reports claiming that of the nearly 200 students out on the field, less so the entire 7th grade, that only about 62 had actually witnessed the encounter. The number was off by dozens, if not scores. This fascinating report might have ended here were it not for the work of the aforementioned ufologist and intrepid investigative journalist Cynthia Hind, who arrived at the school just days later to interview students and staff. Mackie gave her access to the pupils and presented her with some 35 drawings made by the students of the aliens and their vehicle. Hines was impressed with the similarity of the kids' descriptions of both, but noted some marked differences in the images of the ship, which caused her to speculate on the subjective nature of human-alien interactions. Which is to say, there's a school of thought that it is primarily a psychological phenomenon, though also paranormal, wherein you observe things and people observe different things, while others think it is an objective, albeit extremely rare reality, and that small groups of people that have differences in what they viewed, it's just represented by their preconceived notions and whatnot. So that's that, for whatever that's worth. Mackie, the headmaster, though personally skeptical about UFOs and alien visitations, confirmed to both Hind and Mack that regardless of what had actually transpired, he believed that the students were telling the truth, stating, "I honestly believe that they saw something, but for me to actually draw a conclusion as to what it is, I don't think I can do that at this point," which is a perfectly fucking reasonable response, I think.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's not committing to anything. He's like, they saw some shit. They're all scarred mentally. So, yeah, fucking, there you go.
I like that because it's so easy to just poo-poo things. Now, there are some students, there's one specifically in my notes named John Bull, who said that as soon as they were brought in following this sighting, and the kids were flipping out, they were brought together into the assembly hall, which makes sense because everyone's sort of panicking. I don't know if this happened before or after Mackie separated the 60 whatever to make their drawings. And then they were basically told that they were lying or making it up by one of the teachers who was perhaps trying in the students' best interest to quell the panic, but ended up really infuriating everybody because it's like, fuck you. You didn't see it. We're not all making shit up. So, like I say, some people like Mackie seem to be more pragmatic about it. Other people, maybe more old school motherfuckers, were less so. Who knows?
No.
Okay. Soon after, on September 19th, BBC Bureau Chief for Southern Africa, Tim Leach, came down to interview the witnesses. Leach, a dyed-in-the-wool skeptic, claimed that the consistency of the reports had a chilling effect on him. And this is what he said. "I was a hard-ass journalist, skeptical as everybody would be, and it was the same story, and I started getting goosebumps. You looked at these children. They were absolutely credible, and you can look at their eyes, even on the television. You can look at their faces and know if they're bullshitting or not. And they weren't." He went on to add,
bullshit free in 93.
93, 94, but yeah. It's so great to, whenever something happens in a 3, I'm always so happy to be able to say whatever free in 83, 93, 3, but it's so rare. It was a good try, Mark. You stabbed, you went for it, and I'm willing to accept it.
Fuck it, 93, I don't give a shit. It happened. Those kids are fucked up.
Leach went on to add, "I was not so frightened in the war zones of Angola or Rwanda as I was when this story hit. It really gave me a new perspective on life, the universe, and everything, really. I'm glad. I would not have missed that for the world." So the bureau chief from the BBC was obviously a war-torn, heavy-duty, in the field journalist saying, my shit just got upended. I'm not saying that de facto proves anything either way, but it is pretty compelling.
But
yeah.
While the lack of adult witnesses has led some to conclude that the incident is either the product of mass hysteria or a prank produced in the fertile minds of precious children. What do you call that, Mark?
The Whimsy of a Child.
Yes, you do.
My new children's book coming soon for the last 2 years.
It's going to be self-help / children. It's going to be great.
Yeah,
One must consider if it is remotely feasible for approximately 100 preteens to concoct a successful hoax that requires the youngest of the bunch to feign terror while the eldest jeopardize their reputations by claiming to not only have seen an alien, but to have shared a psychic connection with it. not to mention the sheer psychological effort it would be to corroborate a tale as elaborate as this. It should also be noted that in the years following this harrowing event, and there's been plenty of interviews that have found these people. A lot of the people of non-African ancestry had to leave following Mugabe's, purges that we mentioned earlier. And so a filmmaker, well, I'll mention his name in a second, but he was hired by John Mack's Institute to make a documentary, and it is taking fucking forever, and it's finally finished but not released yet. So more on that in a minute. He went all over the world to track these people down, and none of them refute it. None of them say, I was just a kid, I was fucking up. Oh, other kids were saying things, so I just agreed. All of them, like to a person, still say that this shit really happened, which is fucking fascinating to me. And even some are parents now. Some have passed away, but even as they died, there was no deathbed confession saying, oh, no, fucking, it was all bullshit. So it's intriguing. One can't help but to wonder, did these creatures come to warn us about the consequences of environmental abuse so we could make the changes necessary to reverse its effects? Or more frighteningly, were they issuing a thinly veiled threat, a final decree telling the human race in no uncertain terms to fix our world or else? In a terrifying postscript, a year and a half after the incident, Lisa, the girl who was matched skipping and was interviewed by John Mack, told a reporter that she had been suffering from reoccurring nightmares ever since the harrowing events of September 16th, 1994. These repeating night terrors focused on one entity who had either insinuated itself into her subconscious or was actively attempting to abduct the child. She described the horrific psychological assault, stating, I dreamt that the thin one, the long-haired one, he came into my bedroom and he took me from my bed. And then I screamed and I woke up and I screamed. Heartbreakingly adding, my mom didn't believe me.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I know. She's like 10 maybe years old, maybe 11 when she's there.
It's creepy.
It's horrible. But, and here's, I don't know if this is an optimistic note or just a tribute to Lisa. As frightened as she was, Lisa showed a courage most adults can't even conjure up. When Mac asked her, if you saw him again, what would you do? To which she replied, I'll ask him some questions. I'll ask him what he's doing on Earth and what does he want with us. We should all be so ballsy, really, honestly. Tribute to Lisa, who is now a social worker, by the way. She's an adult. Good. She's come one of the many people that is not, done nothing but corroborate the interview she gave as a kid. And a lot of these kids, it's interesting to note, have gone on to do things that are, I guess, what you consider like socially uplifting, like they're community workers or they are organizing groups of people to help like fight hunger or whatever. So it seems like
it had like a big impact on them.
Yes, exactly. Like some kids just remain like, now listen, there's horror stories too, where some of them just turned to alcoholism and depression, were never quite the same, were resentful that adults never believed in them, felt that this, the world was even more fearful a place than it was before they encountered the thing. And that's legit. People are going to have different reactions. Sometimes when you're confronted with a terrifying truth, you're going to like crawl into a drunken hole and deal with it. And some people are going to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and fucking try to fix it. Some people like me might try to do a little of both. There's room across the spectrum for dealing with fucking traumatic shit.
You can still be like a functioning alcoholic, but try to bring positivity to the world. I mean, I think that's really the message of our podcast, really. I think that's what we do. Like, we're here every week. We're your friends. We're friends. We're talking. We're hanging out.
If we can endure,
we have drinking problems.
The horrors of the world. By gosh, you certainly can.
I mean, my original theory on this was gonna be that like AFI showed up for a show and then they, instead of playing a show, they had kids sit down and watch fucking Faces of Death, apparently, like a marathon of it.
Yeah. Outtakes from Natural Born Killers, The Faces of Death, and I guess a pre-version of fucking An Uncomfortable Truth or whatever fucking Gore did.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I guess there's a lot of different angles to kind of take at this. The sheer amount of people, well, kids, but there was also people did witness UFOs and whatnot beforehand, but just the sheer amount of kids that witnessed this and nobody came. My theory of the whimsy of a child is kind of easily taken out here because no one fucking ever cracked. No one was like, oh yeah, we're having a good time with this. It was fucking, we liked Alice Cooper. It was a full fucking throwback. There isn't any of that. So it's kind of hard to say that the kids were making it up because if they were, there would be some sort of evidence. Something would happen. So it could they? I'm not really sure. I know we've talked about like a shared hallucination or whatever, but there's no science.
There are absolutely people that chalk this up to mass hysteria. They say this is a shared hallucination. You get the kids all hyped up, and they put it right in the camp of all the Tokoloshe encounters, which to me is not exactly reasonable. Because, well, I don't think that also is just purely a psychological phenomenon. I think there is something to be said for supernatural entities attacking a school, and it kind of, the rumors spread like wildfire, and kind of like in Ouija Riot 79. I think some things can be legitimately occurring, and other people can just be swept up in the horror of it, especially something that's paranormal or supernatural. But I think this is different because, one main reason is something really seems to have happened, and that the fear didn't really seem to kick in until the psychic link was made.
Right, and these kids are obviously affected, but I was thinking back too to like our episode with the Casablanca entities, where those kids just had a super fucking weird horror psychedelic experience in their backyard.
Yes.
Which could kind of also fall into if it was like mass hysteria or like just some sort of shared experience. I don't really know the science or the psychology behind that. So maybe there is something there.
There's, like I say, there's different camps. We kind of hit on this earlier between the idea that the phenomenon of ufology in general and close encounters of the third kind in particular is either one, objective sightings of anomalous entities and aircraft that are just being interpreted to the best of the ability of the people from an obviously technologically inferior society, or a subjective interpretation of the witnesses of a decidedly paranormal phenomenon. That's hard, because one of the things I love about ufology, like cryptozoology, is that it seems to be hard in the sense that it either happened or it didn't. And if it did, it's technology based or biology based, or it is not. Now, when you get into Carl Jung and certainly Jacques Vallée and Keel, then you start getting into much more ephemeral ideas of a wispy reality wherein we want to think things are either there or aren't, but they aren't necessarily either, and you have to learn to live in this nebulous,
it's the UFOs of your mind. It's the UFO. It's your mind UFOs. It's your fucking psychological breakdown projecting into the fucking ether. Yeah, dude. We all have mind UFOs, dude.
God
we all fucking deal with it in different ways.
I don't have mind UFOs.
Chris
you have more mind UFOs than any of us.
Wow.
You know that. Out of all of
that's a scathing indictment.
Rob and I are pretty open about our mind UFOs. Chris is he's like a little
he's got
little
closet mind UFOs.
He
won't let
son
out
of a
play.
bitch.
Dude, it's like Independence Day when fucking his mind UFOs show up.
They just blow shit up and fucking. We need Will Smith.
Yeah, exactly.
I do not need Will Smith.
We all need Will
Smith. How about
Smith.
Jeff Goldblum? Can you at least need him?
There you go.
I like Jeff Goldblum.
I know. I take that back. I don't dislike Will Smith. I do like Will Smith.
Oh, I do too.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's fine. Like, he's not offensive. Like, he's cool.
I mean, that movie wasn't his finest hour, to be sure.
No,
but that's not necessarily his fault.
I mean, it's no Wild Wild West, but it's still dope.
His movie choices have not been the greatest in the last 20 years.
And whatever. He's happy. He's cool.
That's what
his wife seems cool. Like, whatever. So, Christopher, what do you think happened to these children? Will Smith and your mind UFOs aside, what do you think happened?
Hey, my ideas. Me. Oh, geez. I don't even know where to fucking start, really.
I mean,
Could something
because first of all, do you actually add the initial stories of the color things with the close encounter?
That's a super valid question, Chris, and I debated even doing it myself. The reason why I did, I think, is literally like something I made up completely, which is the equivalent of the 5-second rule for a paranormal flap,
totally.
Which is the 48-hour rule. If it happened within 48 hours, the one that's definitely associated, the two that are definitely associated, is the cigar shape, but they said specifically cigarette shaped craft that the mother and son and 3 Ariel school students saw above the school ground the day before, which may have also helped to impregnate the idea of UFOs in the student body, which we'll deal with in a second, but might have just been a legitimate day before sighting. And the sighting that very morning on September the 16th by Mrs. Stevens, the local farmer who saw the big orange ball over her chicken coop. Those two, I think, are, if they're not associated, the time and geographical closeness of those two events make it so that you are obligated to report them as part of the phenomenon, even while acknowledging that they might not be directly linked. Now, the mass UFO sightings that happened on the 14th, which is technically a day and a half before, because it's the night as opposed to September 16th, the morning, might not have anything to do with it, because they were over Zimbabwe, South Africa, and Zambia. But the fact that it was Africa, or at least Southern Africa's first officially verified mass UFO flap, I just felt like it had to be mentioned. But it is super valid for you to point out that these crazy psychedelic rockets and zeppelins that were flying all over the area at the time might not have fuck all to do with the events that took place over Mrs. Stevens' farm and above Ariel School on the 15th, and actually directly behind the schoolyard and the pit of fucking vipers that's back there on the actual day of the 16th.
So Chris, do you think that these kids actually did have some sort of encounter with these entities, or was dealing with some really weird, like, mass hysteria event that just, some changed the kids' lives, some of them positively, and obviously some of them, not so positive.
It seems highly unlikely that a mass hysteria would result in those findings after just corroboration and stuff. Something clearly happened, I think.
Again, Selma Siddick, the girl that went to protect her younger siblings, she said almost all of the older kids there were experiencing something in different degrees of terror and fascination. But there were a handful that were looking at the exact same place and claimed to have seen nothing. So some people are of the perspective that if you are just grounded in reality and highly skeptical, and you want nothing but, not even want, but you accept nothing but the corporeal, that not only do you get that, but you are unable to perceive beyond. Now, of course, most skeptics fall into that camp, and their eyes would thunderously roll out of their fuck-sucking heads when they're told this, because they're like, oh, so I don't want to believe it, so I can't see it. But there is another legitimate branch that says, yeah, if you really are that hard set in your ways, that something that might be obvious to the perceptions of somebody that's just even a little more open-minded will not penetrate your vision. I hate that shit, because it just goes into the same subjective versus objective fucking argument, because I want some of this shit to be objective. I don't mind if the science is so goddamn extravagant that, as Arthur C. Clarke put it, it's indistinguishable from magic. I don't care about that, but I want it to still be predicated on fucking science. And so it makes it hard. But there's, like I say, legitimate schools of thought that say, if you refuse to believe in this, you don't see it. So it has to be acknowledged that a lot of people seem to objectively have seen something that was beyond the purview of their anyone's day-to-day life, and other people simply did not. Well, small kids were fucking, rocking the jungle gym and gave no fucks.
Right. All right.
So it's higher than 30% is the long version of that, or the long, how I got there.
Yes, that was an excellent
10
road.
minutes later.
Yeah, seriously.
Still, all of those elements were important, and I think our listeners appreciate that.
I believe so. Yes. All right. Well, you know what? I mean, that's sort of our round table take on it. There's a lot here to unpack.
Oh, dude, this is the most important close encounter of the 90s, I would think. Probably the most. Oh no, go ahead.
Ultimately, we could say that maybe some extraterrestrials did actually come down and visit these kids, and for whatever reason, they were only visible on whatever weird spectrum to this certain group of kids that were open to it. Almost like it's like their version of like psychic camouflage or something.
But bear in mind, the vast majority that were at that end of the playground did witness the event.
Right. Yeah, so for some reason they come down, and like most things that aliens do, they have no direct line of communication, and they get people that have no fucking impact on anything currently to be like, hey, here's some fucking horrible shit, fucking you better change it, or the fucking all the trees are going to disappear and shit's going to fucking suck from now on. So
do you know who's more optimistic than you?
Who's that?
One of the kids, because I watched, there's tons of videos. All right, I'll digress really briefly. Randall Nickerson was the guy hired by the John E. Mack Institute to make a documentary based on the footage that was shot around Mack's interviews and Cynthia Hines interviews and all that. It has taken forever. Apparently it's done, but it has not been released yet. It has not found distribution as of this moment that we're talking. But I hope it is soon, because I would fucking love to see it. Okay.
Totally.
So, so one of the kids that was interviewed, I don't know, again, by Hind or Mack, or actually, I think it was another journalist from a South African Channel 4, whose name I did not catch. She had a group of kids sitting around a tree, including Lisa and others that we've talked about. And this boy said, maybe, it was so pragmatic and devastating the way he said it, maybe because we're young and we're not going to be dying so soon, they wanted to tell young people, because young people are going to live a long time and make a change. Now, said with the the Highlander fucking manifesto of all kids, which I love. Because, I mean, the kid is like maybe barely in double digits. So I don't find that offensive. I find it awesome and hopeful. But his speculation was maybe they were telling us because we're young enough to do something about it. Right. He didn't feel like you just told kids that can't do anything. He still, as a kid, because this interview happened within a month or so of the actual event, he was maybe they told me because we can do something. Now, who knows how many
longer. Yeah. All right. Well, that's always a possibility. So I don't know. Personally, I think I'm going to go with the whole weird shared psychic experience dealing with UFOs of the mind. But I'm going to put this out there.
But no, I'm interested. Before you put it out there, I'm not done picking your brain yet.
Okay.
What is the origin of this mass psychogenic experience? Because that's just as fascinating.
Well, that's where the Tokoloshi comes in.
How'd I fucking know? All right, continue. I want to know.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe if this was not actually a ufological experience, but maybe if this was some sort of weird paranormal, this group of kids and because of whatever area that they were in, came across one of these weird fucking paranormal, I guess not paranormal beings, but were demonic entities, the Tokoloshi, and it just fucking started fucking with them, and made them hallucinate and made them get all fucked up. That's always a possibility.
So is Tokoloshi just a regional nom de plume for an ultra-terrestrial? Be honest.
No, I was thinking more like fairy folk. Something more like that. Not necessarily ultra-terrestrial, but maybe like fairy folk.
But that fairy folk whose main agenda was inspiring terror in human beings to what end?
Yeah, all right. You know what? I'll give that to you. I'm gonna give you. I'm gonna take out the old ultra terrestrial card here and say, all right, Robert, maybe I'm gonna give you an ultra terrestrial card.
I'm not trying to force you there. I just want to know specifically where you are.
I think maybe this might have a more paranormal angle to it, whether it's an ultra-terrestrial or a Tokoloshi or the Fae or whatever sort of weird fucking evil thing is happening. Maybe not even evil, maybe like it's a weird fucking teaching mechanism, like the worst form of fucking mental yoga ever. Like, here's all this traumatic bullshit. Enjoy. It's going to make some of you fucking really awesome in life, and then it's going to ruin some of you. And those of you that will succeed will go on to help the world, and those of you that won't probably deserve not to succeed.
Some fucking Ayn Randian fucking science. If you can rise to this horrible challenge, you win. If not, fuck off.
Totally.
To the bottom of Darwin's heap.
It very well could be. Yeah, it's emotional Darwinism. There you go. If you can if you can get a positive mental attitude about this shit and turn it around and be a better person, you win. If you can't, you fucking don't.
I will read all of your essays on fucking emotional Darwinism, just so you know.
Don't. They're just god awful.
Oh, it's a real thing. God bless you.
Yeah, totally.
But here, I have to ask you this.
On my Tumblr.
I have to ask you this.
Maybe it's paranormal though.
Why, bearing in mind that we have a UFO that has running lights made of some silverish metal of unknown origin, creatures that look almost exactly like Greys except for their Alice Cooper hair and S&M fucking gear, what makes you think this is paranormal and not extraterrestrial, which about 85% of it seems to be?
Right. I'm just saying this is an offshoot theory here that maybe we're looking at it as a UFO phenomenon, but it actually might be tied to something more paranormal. That's all I'm saying. Just putting it out there, you know. I mean, I know we've talked about like Magonia.
No, I just didn't know what was making you lean away from ufology and towards.
I always try to take the Jacques Vallée route. To be like, okay, what could if we're not dealing with nuts and bolts fucking spaceships and people from other planets and little green men fucking and whatever else and greys and reptilians and shit, what else could we be dealing with? Obviously, it could be a psychic projection, as we mentioned, or quite possibly it could just be beings from another plane of existence, or maybe it's beings from our existence that are trying to teach us something, much like your ultra-terrestrial theory. So I think that all kind of plays into the paranormal. Possibly. Not saying I'm sold on it. I'm just putting it out there as a theory just to give you your ultra-terrestrial card and, get you back into the library.
The Dark Lord's Advocate.
Wow, the Dark Lord's Advocate. There you go. So I think there's a lot here. Obviously, I just talked a whole paranormal, route here, but it's not uncommon for aliens or beings to come down to be like, you're fucking up. And of course, to not tell the proper people that can get the information to, who it needs to get to. It's never like they go to, government or
unless
anything.
Unless they're playing the long game.
People.
I mean, people are always like, skeptics, I should say, are always like, why don't you land on the White House lawn? Well, first off, it would start an international incident. They might be playing a multi-generational long game where fucking they plant the thought into the right people so that it gets generation by generation to the exact right people at the exact right time. Now, I might be giving them way too much credit. I mean, but I also loathe the Jay Leno's of the world that are like, why do they always show up to people named Bubba who live in blah, blah, blah. It's like, you're fucking, first off, you're condescending and you're a prick and you're not that fucking funny. So eat it. But fucking additionally, who knows what their agenda is? How the fuck can you possibly speculate, especially if they're working on levels of perception, intelligence, and experience that are millions of years in advance of our own?
Yeah, no, I dig it. If they're playing fucking 9D chess or whatever, then we're just kind of pawns in their game, and maybe it worked out. Maybe some people are going to go on to do fucking really cool shit and help humanity, and the butterfly effect or whatever that fucking stupid movie was. Maybe it all works out in the end.
Or movie, good theory.
Maybe somebody just showed up and showed a bunch of kids some fucking Faces of Death DVDs, and everyone freaked the fuck out. Possibility.
Yeah, nobody needs that projected into their fucking minds.
Just saying, possibility. So,
what do you think,
there
Chris?
You have it.
No, we're not done.
No, I was going to say, let's do our closing thoughts here.
All right.
No, that's it. Yeah, I mean, what else is there?
Honestly, I mean, we could pontificate about it for hours.
That's what I'm saying. So,
I mean, there's only really so many things that it really could be.
That's true. I will say this: what it leans towards for me, which doesn't necessarily eliminate either paranormal or extraterrestrial, is something I think it was Gordon Creighton, one of the great old British ufologists who was one of the founding writers of Flying Saucer Review, where, obviously we get tons of great stories from. His speculation was that a lot of these things that we believe are extraterrestrials are actually, as we often say, interdimensionals, and that they are sharing our world, but maybe on slightly different vibrational planes or whatever of existence, but it's still our world. And he goes, what do you think you would feel like if some other, and I am definitely paraphrasing here because he was classy and didn't use the words I'm going to use, if some fuckface starts dumping oil or testing nukes in your backyard? you are going to hate this shit. This is not any way to act. So if these creatures are occupying a slightly vibrationally different version of Earth than us, not another planet, not another time, just Earth 0.3, whatever it may be, and all of a sudden they've got to fucking deal with all this environmental degradation and nuclear testing and all sorts of ill shit that we just throw willy-nilly around that are killing us, but they might be killing them even more intensely, assuming how much can breach their world and how vulnerable they are to such effects. You would basically try to impregnate every mind, this is where I'm getting into my version of it, that you could come across with the notion of how horrible what you were doing is. Because an ET shouldn't really, unless they are really benevolent, give a fuck what we do with our home world. It's like, all right, yeah, these idiot monkeys are ruining the party for themselves. Fuck them. Maybe I'm too pragmatic. But if you share this world with us, you got to just impart on every human being you can, whether they're fucking highly political or just a bunch of kids. You're fucking it up. Cut it out.
Start with the kids.
Killing all of us.
You start with the kids. That's how you end interdimensional pollution. This is how interdimensional fracking comes to a halt. Is Perfect. Get the kids first. Get the kids first. All right, well, cool. There you have it. Thank you for joining us for the Kryptonaut podcast. I hope you all are dealing with the UFOs or the interdimensional pollution of your mind.
And just so you know, not all of us agree on the slogan, get the kids first. All right, Mark was just spitballing there. That is not going to be it's the fucking on the United Way posters of interdimensionals, I hope.
Yeah, so right. I mean, don't let's not send the message through the kids. Let's send it to the adults or
all I'm saying,
the local council.
Is the slogan "Get the kids first" might not be the one to go with. That's all I'm saying.
You're right. I think you're right. I think we're going to make an executive decision and we're going to reverse that and we're going to say leave the kids alone. How about that?
Sounds good.
Leave the kids alone.
Leave them alone. There you go. Leave these poor fucking kids alone.
And extraterrestrials and or interdimensionals, leave those kids alone.
Exactly. You turned it right into a Pink Floyd song, didn't you?
Didn't you?
Didn't you? Nice. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you so very much for joining us for the Kryptonaut podcast, the social medias, the Instas, the Twitters, and the Facebooks. Check us out there. Actually, you know what? Before we end this episode, we wanted to give a shout out to some listeners who recently sent us some presents that I've been enjoying, but I have not had a chance to get them over to Rob and Chris just yet.
Because you're a dick.
Yeah, you got it. Exactly. I'm a dick. That's exactly why I've not sent the presents over. Let's see. We got Sean Miller actually sent us some super cool books that we're going to be getting over to Bobby for some research. So thank you so very much, Sean.
Can't wait to check them out.
Dope. And also, too, our buddy Kevin Belay over on Instagram, KevRockWins. He sent us a fucking awesome shitload of super cool prints from all of his different tattoo flash sheets that he did.
Oh, my God, yes. His work, the cryptid flash he sent us forever ago was brilliant. Yeah. I can't wait to check that out.
We are definitely going to have some arguments over who's going to be taking what. We might have to just make it community property in the new studio because, I want, all of them. So
that makes sense.
So I currently have them. So I'm enjoying them right now. So thank you both so very much. Obviously, we appreciate everyone that sends us stuff. It's it's just so awesome. We the fact that people send us stuff is super cool. So thank you.
Oh, it's the best. You guys fucking rule.
The patreon.com/Kryptonaut podcast. $1 is a shout out. $5 is a shout out and some bonus audio. Thank you to everyone over there. It is so awesome. We have some really cool interviews coming up on Patreon. We're not going to give away who we're going to be interviewing, but we got some stuff happening over there. So check that out. I think that's it. Oh, hellerspace.com. Get yourself some merch. I believe the Meals on Wheels charity t-shirts are over with. So thank you to everyone that contributed to that. We were able to make a nice contribution to the local Meals on Wheels program.
But I think we are still selling masks wherein if anyone buys a mask, one gets donated a professional grade mask to a health professional.
Yes, we recently launched masks because masks are now a way of life. So you know what? You may as well wear one and you may as well fucking rock a Kryptonaut one because why not? And when you buy one, like Rob said, we TeePublic will donate one. A FDA approved medical mask to a medical professional. So in a way, it's cool. you can rock your shit, and then someone gets a medical grade one. So I think it's a win-win situation.
Exactly.
I think
and then we can look in the mirror and realize we're not exploiting a pandemic for our own benefit, because we're helping folks out too.
No, we haven't been wrestling with this now for like over a month.
No, we haven't refused to do it literally until this new protocol came out, because we're like, we are not exploiting a plague, damn it. We're better than that. And they're like, they're going to give one to a health professional? All right, let's do it.
Yeah.
But actually, they look cool. I mean, now I'm going to sound like I'm a turncoat. They look kind of cool.
No, I mean they do, but I don't know, man. Whatever. Look, we look at 100%, honesty here. We feel weird about it. Okay, let's just get it out there. We feel weird about it, but whatever. They're there. It's a thing. It's the way we fucking live now. Everything's changed. Life is different. Let's all fucking deal with it and wear kryptonite masks. Boom. How's that? Good.
Perfectly stated.
Leave the goddamn kids alone.
There it is. Better slogan. A much better slogan.
There you go. Much better slogan. All right. Thank you all so very much for joining us, and we're talking to you soon.
Bye, friends.
Bye-bye.
Peace. Chris, did you tell everyone about your helmet?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I clearly did not.
Chris is buying a new helmet, and it's going to be pretty fucking dope.
He's smuggling Tokoloshi, and he needs to be safe when he's doing it.
He's not going to look like me. I look like a space ball wearing my fucking helmet. So on my $700 bike. So.
Yeah, I know.
Oh shit! All right, we'll be talking to you.
Full on Rick Moranis. Nice.
Peace.